Good evening and welcome to Have a Seat with Chris Hansen from a stormy summer night in New York City as we continue our investigation into the Dahvie Vanity case. Jesus Torres, frontman of Blood on the Dance Floor, accused of sexually assaulting and harassing a number, dozens and dozens and dozens of young women and, as we'll find out tonight, young men in some cases, over a 10-year period of time. I was on the phone today with some investigators on the case, and I'll get to that later. Some very interesting developments on this and the other focus of our investigations here on Have a Seat with Chris Hansen. But tonight, I'm very pleased to have as guests on this show Emiie Edel, who is a survivor of Dahvie Vanity, and Brandon Curtis, who also found himself in Dahvie's circle and suffered some abuse as a young man of the age of 13. But we're going to start with Emiie Edel tonight. Emiie, how are you?
I'm good, Chris. How are you?
Great, thank you. Thanks for being on the show. Take us back to the beginning. You first became aware of Dahvie Vanity, as so many other young people did, on MySpace, correct?
Yep. MySpace. I was 14. I was not supposed to have a MySpace, but I had a MySpace. So.
And what drew you to Dahvie Vanity? What was it about Dahvie that got your attention as a 14-year-old girl exploring MySpace?
It was all his like kawaii color vibe, I guess. I was dressing in pretty dark clothing and was trying to expand into being more of like being colorful, but being dark at the same time.
I mean, what was going on in your life at that time when you were 14? What was happening? Where were you?
I was a freshman in high school, and let's see, I was probably just listening to a lot of music and trying as hard as I could to upset my parents, as that's what angsty teens do.
And were you in a particularly dark period? Were you just being a teen? Was there anything happening in your life that made you feel sad or happy or kind of alone? Or how would you describe it?
My grandmother had passed away earlier in the year. So I was in a pretty dark place. My mom had moved out a couple years before, and I was still pretty upset with her because she just kind of left. We're very close now, but I lost my grandmother, which put me in a really dark place.
And did you find Dahvie or did Dahvie find you?
I found Dahvie.
And how did you reach out to him, and how was it that he responded to you?
So it was mostly comments on like his music on MySpace. It was on my playlist that played on my page when you came to my page, and I did a lot of HTML coding as a teenager. So I did custom HTML stuff with Blood on the Dance Floor logos in my page. And eventually it involved messaging on Facebook, or MySpace, Facebook. Well, didn't have Facebook yet, but it was messaging on MySpace, yeah.
And what was it about the Blood on the Dance Floor music that lured you in, that spoke to you, that was attractive to you?
That's a great question. I still haven't figured that out. I think the lyrics really upset my dad, who I lived with at the time. He was not a fan. He had a bit of a problem with me listening to them. And actually in recent years, I listened to a song that I listened to a lot growing up, and I have absolutely no idea why I would have listened to that.
But at the time, it made sense in the 14-year-old mind of.
And yeah, it was like the beats were sometimes good. Like the music was very poppy sounding with some kind of, I guess, darker lyrics. You don't think about all the sexual innuendo towards children. Because I didn't notice that growing up. But now that I've listened again, I'm like, never mind.
And did you reach out to Dahvie, or did he see that you were a fan and he reached out to you?
I believe I reached out to him.
And what was the conversation? How did it go?
I told him I was a fan of his music, that I liked his style. And from there, we kind of messaged a little bit. It was sporadic messaging there for a little bit, as I was not supposed to have MySpace, so I had a very hard time getting online.
And you were 14 at the time, and he's what, 26, 27?
He's like 25, 26, yeah.
26. And did you find it odd at all that here's this guy who's a bit of a rock star, who's 24, 25, 26, is talking to a 14-year-old girl? Or did you find it flattering?
I kind of found it flattering, and a lot of my parents' friends were around, so I had interacted a lot with older adults when I was growing up. So it wasn't really strange for me to be having a conversation like that. I was always kind of, I guess, mature for my age. So I didn't really feel like I was 14, even though I was. I was more like acting 16, 17.
And how did the conversation start?
It was all like, hey, thanks. And then we were talking about when they were going to start touring again. And we were talking about when I was going to come see the show and what was going to happen and hanging out. And then really it was just a lot of friendly banter back and forth.
And what did you think that Dahvie Vanity meant by hanging out?
Well, the only thing I knew hanging out as a teenager was like sitting outside and smoking cigarettes and talking about all the weird things that come to mind.
And so you ultimately you go to his concert. Was that right in Denver?
Yes, it was at this little venue kind of off of downtown. It was September 12th of 2011 was my first show.
And you get there. Did he know you were going to attend? Had you had a conversation before about you being there?
Yes.
And so he was anticipating you being there. Did he have you on a list? Did he get you backstage? Tell me how all that went down.
So he was upstairs meeting with the fans who were, all about my age and younger. And I was alone. I had gone to a couple of concert venues alone. My mom's friend, who was a cab driver, was outside waiting the whole time. And we were kind of chatting, and he was like, hey, I'm going to have you go watch the opening band and then come back upstairs and we'll hang out for a little bit. And he gave me his number.
Right. And did you go watch the opening band?
I did.
And after that, you went back to hang out with Dahvie?
Yeah, I waited till everybody else was kind of, because the venue had an upper level and a lower level, so I waited till everyone else was downstairs so we could hang out kind of one-on-one.
And did you think it was weird at all that this guy is going to hang out with a young teen?
Not at the time. I was just excited that somebody who was semi-famous wanted to hang out with me. I was kind of the black sheep of my friend group and of my family growing up. So anybody wanting to hang out with me was really a cool thought because I did not have many friends growing up.
So you get up there, you and Dahvie are alone. What happens?
He and I were talking, and he asked me to come with him to the bathroom. And we went to the bathroom, and he started to kiss me, which at the time I didn't think much of. I didn't really kiss back for a few minutes until, I was like, okay, this is really happening right now. But then it turned into forced oral sex. And after that, I'd actually lost a chunk of hair that night. My mom made a comment about how I had a giant knot in the back of my head and half my ponytail was missing.
You lost a chunk of hair. How did this happen?
He was pulling my hair. I had my hair. He put my hair in a ponytail and was pulling on it.
That's how violent he was with you, that he actually pulled hair out of your scalp.
Afterwards, he gave me a t-shirt and told me to change my shirt so there was no evidence, and he left. And I hung out in the bathroom for a few minutes, and I texted a couple friends, and I went downstairs and I watched the rest of the show.
He sexually assaults you. He harms you physically by pulling out your hair. He tells you to change shirts to make sure there's no evidence.
Mm-hmm. He had, I guess, he had ejaculated partially on my shirt. So, we were the only two up there, and I think Garrett, because it was still when Garrett was in the band, so Garrett was outside, and there was like somebody at the merch table, but he went out and grabbed, I remember this so well because I was so excited about the shirt that I didn't even think about what had just happened. But it was a baby pink shirt that said "Bitches Get Stitches" in huge letters. And he came back and he was like, "You need to change." He was concealing evidence. He didn't want anyone to know what happened.
At that age and at that stage of your life, did you even realize what had just happened to you in terms of being sexually assaulted? I mean, I guess, first of all, you know, this is not your fault. You were brought into a situation, you were taken advantage of, clearly. You were underage. There's no way you could have given consent legally. But looking back on this, I mean, did you even get at the time or have any idea of what had just happened to you?
No. I really just took it as, I guess, a compliment. Like, this guy that at the time I thought was really attractive, which I still don't understand.
Well, you were a kid. You can't blame yourself.
Yeah. I was a kid. He was flashy, and like most children, I like flashy. I was really interested in his style, and I really just thought of it as like, you know, maybe this will be the start of like a relationship, because I didn't realize until actually about probably 2 years ago that he had actually sexually assaulted me. It took me that long. I've repressed it.
So he leaves at that point. He gives you the pink t-shirt that says "Stitches Get Bitches" or "Bitches Get Stitches." Mm-hmm. You think at that age, that's, wow, that's kind of cool. Really have no concept of what he's just done to you. And he's gone.
Mm-hmm. He just, I don't really know where he went. I didn't go to look for him. Like I said, he gave me his phone number. So I texted him, let him know that I was going to go and watch the rest of the bands. So that way he knew that I was going downstairs, but I was still there if he wanted to still hang out.
This breaks my heart as a parent and as somebody who's interviewed a lot of survivors over the years. I mean, it almost seems as though, Emiie, that it upset you more a few years later when you figured out what had happened to you than it upset you at the time. Is that fair?
Yeah, I guess it kind of came out in therapy, and I hadn't at the time, like I said, thought about it. And I had kind of repressed it because, I mean, it was a scary thought. Like, it had happened a few times after that. There were multiple times that this happened.
So you leave after that concert and you stay in touch with him via text?
Through text. And we did phone calls sometimes. There was a girl I used to hang out with that she was there when I called him because she didn't believe me. And I told her what happened, and I had tried talking about it, but it was just something that I repressed, and it upset me. And honestly, up until I had talked to you about it, it still really upset me. I'm still hurt by it now, as it has affected a lot in my life growing up.
That's understandable. It's very understandable you'd be hurt by it. How could you not be, really? So yeah. You stay in contact with Dahvie. When's the next time you see him after the first incident?
It was probably about 7 months later. He was in Denver. I had Skype for a little bit there as a teenager, and I stayed in touch with a lot of people I met on MySpace, which was not smart. I do not recommend it to anyone under the age of 18 to meet anyone online. But so we video chatted a bit. I had seen him at a couple other shows. The same thing had happened at those shows.
And he did the same thing to you. He would lure you back so you'd be alone together. And then did it happen the same way?
The next couple of times were similar, but they weren't as violent.
And did you think at the time this was just a way to stay in Dahvie's circle, to be a part of his life? Did he promise you anything? Did he tell you that you'd have a relationship with him?
He always told me that we'd be very close friends, that, we'd always have a special kind of relationship, which at 14 and 15, and I think the last time I saw him when I was 16, was enticing to me.
When was the last time you actually saw him? And why was it that you finally said, I'm not going to do this anymore?
It would have probably been 2011. So a couple years later, 2011, like October, November, and I had gotten myself into an abusive relationship, and I was no longer allowed to leave the house, and I couldn't listen to my music. I couldn't do anything. So I had kind of fallen into this little, I guess I became like a hermit almost. And then eventually I just was like, I don't want to talk to anybody anymore. I just wanted to be alone.
And so you just withdrew from any contact with Dahvie?
Yes. I had a really skewed relationship. I had a really awful view of relationships, because I would try to date because of what had happened. I would try to date people that were on the upwards of 22, 23. When I was 16, I was dating a 22-year-old, and that to me was normal.
Do you think because of the abuse you suffered at the hands of Dahvie, that set you on a track to continue for a period of time in abusive relationships, because that's all you knew?
Yes.
And what toll has that taken on you?
It's like growing up, I have had a harder time with accepting when relationships, I guess, are healthy. My husband now is probably the best person I've ever been with, but for a while there, I would tell my boyfriends, like, hey, you can have another girlfriend. And I was like, I had a guy that would constantly beat the crap out of me, and I just took it because that was what I knew was okay. And he sexually assaulted me a couple of times, and he took it as, well, she's my bitch. I can do what I want.
How important was therapy for you to get out of this horrible cycle of sexual violence?
It was very important. My parents were huge on getting me the correct care for my mental health. I was put on medications. I was huge into self-harm, and my mom pulled me out of that. And after I realized what had happened, I had a close call with a suicide attempt, and it ended up obviously not working, and I'm glad that it didn't. But I made sure I was seeking therapy, and I was seeing psychiatrists constantly. I was seeing psychologists every week. I always had an appointment scheduled so I could kind of give myself this, like, hey, I deserve to be in a normal, healthy relationship. I don't need to be abused.
Emiie, Denver was also the location of an incident that led to Dahvie being arrested and investigated for sexually assaulting two other young women. Ultimately, he was not prosecuted in that case. Did you have any idea at the time that this had gone on in the same town with Dahvie?
I did not, and it actually, if I remember correctly, happened within the same week.
It was right in the same time frame, yeah.
Yeah, because they were supposed to do 3 shows in Denver and 1 show in Colorado Springs. They did 1 show in Denver. The next one was canceled for that arrest, and then the Colorado Springs show was canceled as well.
The young women involved in that actually came on the show several weeks ago. Did you ever talk to them independent of that? Did you ever share your story with them?
I haven't. I have had a really hard time talking about this, even to my closest friends. My dad, dragged the gory details out of me, and I feel terrible that he knows that now. But I really kept it to myself most of the time, other than when I had initially sparked contact with you. I had kept it to myself. And it caused a lot of sleepless nights and a lot of stress and a lot of panic attacks. And even now, I'm very anxious that, you know, I'm talking about this. I'm not worried about repercussions, but I'm also worried about repercussions because I don't know what's going to happen. I know people are going to say things and that's fine, but I don't know, like, if he's going to come forward and if anything like that's going to happen. That concerns me deeply.
Why was it so important for you to speak out, to talk about this in this very public way?
He's still hurting girls. He's still hurting girls that age, and the psycho effects of what he's doing to these girls, it's going to affect them, and it could lead to self-harm. It could lead to suicide. It could lead to a million things because I experienced, God, at least trying all of those things because of this. And now, even at 25, I'm like uncomfortable with a lot of things, and I am terrified of men. I have been absolutely scared of going on dates because I'm worried that something like that's going to happen. If somebody's hand goes up behind my head, I'm scared that they're going to like pull my hair and they're going to make me do things I don't want to. And like, it's been 11 years and I still am worried about things like that happening.
Well, that's very understandable. I mean, to have that happen at 14 years old and to, not even be able to process it at that time and then to live with it, even with therapy, even being in a healthy, loving relationship today, it's still not something you ever completely get over, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, my husband knows like a little bit about it, but he doesn't know everything. And it's interesting, actually, because this whole situation led to a stalker.
A stalker. So somebody knew that you were victimized by Dahvie and was stalking you because of that.
Because I had told him that he asked me on a date. I said no. I said, listen, I'm just not interested. And he was like, well, it's because you're a slut. Because, as soon as you say no to somebody, you're automatically a slut. But I made a comment about how, like, it wasn't anything like that. It was just that I wasn't interested. And he asked me, well, what kind of music do you like? While we were still, because he was still calling me a slut and we were still chatting, like just nothing was going on. And he was like, my favorite band is Blood on the Dance Floor. And I had moved to Fort Collins. So this was probably 2015. And I was like, oh, well, I don't like Blood on the Dance Floor, and this is why. And I was like, I was a victim of assault from the singer. And he was like, if you say one more bad thing, I will effing kill you. And he had showed up at my job a couple of times. He followed me around when I was planning my 21st birthday. He was everywhere that I was.
And this is all because he was a fan of Blood on the Dance Floor and Dahvie Vanity, and you told him you weren't a fan because you had been sexually assaulted by Dahvie Vanity.
Yes, he said, I have no proof, which makes me a liar, and that I was just trying to get attention for it. And all I remember is his name was Maddie. And he showed up at my job actually within the last 2 years.
Just within the last 2 years, this happened.
Yeah, this has been going on. He's been stalking me since 2015.
So for 5 years, he's been stalking you?
Yes, it finally ended when I moved back to Denver from northern Colorado. But when I was getting ready to move, showed up at my job. This was in 2019 that he showed up at my job.
Did you go to authorities? Did you try to get a restraining order or anything like that?
I tried. Since the threats were all online, and they just didn't take it seriously.
Wow. Did you ever go online and talk about Dahvie or any of the things that happened with him?
No, this is the first part. The first time I've even thought about talking about it online. A couple of my really close friends that I've met online through like Facebook that I've never met in person know what happened because, and I know they're watching now. We had kind of chatted about it a little bit because once I had initiated contact with you, I was really stressed about it. And so I had like just wrote novels, and I was hurting, and I told these people that I've never met what happened, and I've had more support from them than people that I tried to tell that I knew in real life when I was younger.
You know, it's interesting how many people have, scars from trauma with Dahvie, and the strength that you're showing here tonight by talking about this and carrying on, the strength of all the young women who have come forward to talk about this and gotten involved into what is now a very active law enforcement investigation that appears to be really going someplace now. And I had some words today with somebody involved in that investigation, very encouraging words about where this is going. And I think, before the end of the year, we're going to see some prosecution here. You have not as yet come forward to law enforcement. You obviously have the opportunity. We have sort of a support system set up, through this show, through Levy and Ashlee, who kind of coordinated some of this stuff for survivors. What was it that kept you from going to law enforcement initially?
So when I was 14 and 15 and 16, I didn't want to get him in trouble because, this was this taboo thing, and he was risking a lot to try to, hang out with me. And, it felt like I had a relationship, a long distance relationship that didn't make any sense whatsoever, but I didn't ever want to get him in trouble because it was my fault. It's how I thought about it when I was younger.
And when you started to realize that, in fact, you were the victim of sexual assault, did you just think it was too late, or you were outside of the statute of limitations, or it just was too painful to do?
It was a little bit of a combination of the statute of limitations, as this happened. It's almost 11 years ago, in a couple months. And it's been really hard to talk about. I mean, I have, like I said, my parents kind of know what happened, but I have a really hard time opening up to my family, let alone other people. So this is a lot right now. So I've thought about reaching out, but at this point, I just don't think it'd do anything.
Well, we're going to connect you, and you can make that decision. I think there are a lot of ways to support an investigation. It's something we can talk about after the show and help you out with. But I need to tell you, as we speak here tonight, that the amount of support in the chat here on the show is just overwhelming, and people realize how brave you are for coming forward and talking about it. Before the show, Emiie, we talked to Brandon Curtis, who's going to join us now, and I want to talk to him a little bit. I have so many more questions for you, so I want you to hang here with me. And I know that you and Brandon were chatting together before the show. Brandon Curtis joins us now from a suburb of Detroit, Michigan. Actually, he's in Detroit, Michigan, but works in the suburb of Detroit. And Brandon, thanks for being here with us tonight. I appreciate it very much. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me, Chris.
Awesome. I think it's important, and I've talked to some other guys who, were victimized in a business way or, power way, taken advantage of by Dahvie Vanity. We've had Jay Von Monroe on, and Bryce was on talking about, looking back how Dahvie was just really, really good. And these are Bryce's words, and I think that they're very apt at being a very shitty guy. And you, Brandon, got sucked into this circle, this Dahvie vortex, if you will, at the age of 13. Mm-hmm. Tell me how that happened.
First off, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for all that you've been doing. I really appreciate you. I got sucked into the whole blood on the dance floor thing when I was 13. When I was 13, I was in a very difficult time of my life. I was getting bullied severely. I barely had friends. I barely had a father figure in my life at the time. Because of this, I was self-harming a lot. I was cutting myself very frequently. And I was in a very dark time. And at the time, Blood on the Dance Floor was doing a ton of interviews and talking about not self-harming and using keywords that really spoke to me. Keywords about, cutting yourself, depression, all of that kind of stuff that me as a broken 13-year-old who had really, let's get real, nothing left to live for at that point, I felt sucked into it. I thought that someone finally heard me and someone understood me. And now that I look back at that, in my opinion, I think that we know now that he does not care at all about anyone. And I think that the reason why he made that his message for so long, I think, was to lure in people like me who were broken, that were impressionable.
I mean, there's no question that the lyrics, the messages, his texting, everything that he did in social media throughout his career, even today, you see him on Instagram and other places posting these spiritual-like messages, was geared toward very vulnerable teens, young men and young women. In your case, it resonated with you. How did you actually come to meet him personally? How did that come about?
So the first time that I met him, I was 13 at the time, and we met they had a show in Toledo, Ohio at a venue called Frankie's, and they were on tour with Jeffree Star and William Control at the time. It was a Lookin' Hot Dangerous tour, and I just met him after the show, and the first time meeting him was fairly normal for any, meeting a band after a show. We took a picture together, and that was pretty much it.
But this continued. How long till you actually met him again, or socialized, or hung out with him, or kind of became a super fan, if you will?
Yeah, this band had a very rigorous touring schedule. They spent about 8 months out of the year on the road. So I would, their next show would never be longer than 4 months away. So I would go to their shows, 3 times a year at least. And as those shows progressed, it wasn't hard to get a message from Dahvie back in the day. And we ended up linking up and talking a little bit because we were both born on September 5th. So we shared that in common. It was through meeting him at multiple shows that I guess he got to know me a little bit better. And he started, saying things like, "I remember you, you're so mature for your age, you're amazing," stuff like that. Things that honestly, it made me look up to him as like a father figure, because at that point that was the first grown man that actually validated me and gave me the time of day.
What do you think he wanted from you, Brandon, looking back?
Looking back at it, when you give me free merch at your shows, when you retweet photos of me in your merch all the time, when you bring me up on stage and you sing songs to me, so much that your fans start drawing photos of me and sending them to me in the mail, you are, in my opinion, conditioning me and grooming me to be like this young person who you've never done anything bad to, so that like I could be like, well, nothing bad has ever happened to me. Because as a 14-year-old, I didn't know that you should never doubt an assault victim. Now I know that, right? Back then when I was impressionable, I viewed him as an adult, so I didn't think that. And I think that he is really dumb. He is stupid, but he is smart in the way that every single one of us was a pawn in a chess game to him. And unfortunately, the part that I played was someone who was young that I think ended up luring more fans in because, I'm on social media and he's building me up and everything. And it's similar to kind of like what he did with Jay, I feel like, but on a much smaller scale.
You were a bit of an influencer in the day as a young teen. Do you think he saw you as an opportunity to bring other teens into the tent, both for reasons of being popular and having a fan base, but also to bring in young women who might say, well, look, Brandon Curtis is safe. He's 13, 14 years old. He's hanging out. He's in the pictures with Dahvie. He looks happy. It's okay if I go there. And then he would take advantage of those young women.
I never thought that anyone who was coming with me to the shows was going to get taken advantage of. And I never feared for any of my friends for the duration of the time that we would go to those shows together. And none of my friends that I was at the shows with, we never left each other. We stayed with each other consistently. I'll never be inside of his mind. So I don't know exactly what he was trying to do with me or what purpose it served, but I know that he was really trying to make an impression on me. And he was trying to use me in some way. And looking back at it, totally seems like he did this with Garrett Ecstasy. He did this with Javon Monroe. He did this with, you know, young gay men that fit that like look that he's kind of like going for to lure people in, I guess.
I've seen some of the pictures and you sent them to me of the two of you together. You look happy. You look like a kid who's a little bit starstruck. You look like, hey, I found a bit of an identity here. And I've got somebody who's famous, who's validating me as a young man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, when you're that young, you don't stop to think that something is weird about a man twice your age telling you that you're mature for your age. You're just like, wow, dude, someone finally like looks at me. You know what I mean? And like, whether I want to, you know, come to terms with this or not, this man left an effect on me for my entire life. I mean, I wear the lyrics, "Believe in all that you made," tattooed across my chest. Those are his lyrics. I am a hairdresser today. And, you know, he was allegedly a hairdresser, but he was originally what turned my mind onto hairdressing. It's crazy.
There was one particular instance that was very disturbing to me, Brandon, and you talk about it, and it was similar, although not consummated, but similar to what so many young women have talked about, including Emiie, who's with us here tonight. I'm going to put you on together in just a minute, but tell me how this came about, what he did to you and where it was and how it happened.
So the year was 2012. It was November, and it was the Seen Is Dead tour, which was with Jeffree Star, New Year's Day, Dahvie Suicide. The venue was the Blind Pig in Ann Arbor. And so my tour date that I was at came about maybe a week or so after New Year's Day had been kicked off of the tour, which at this point in time, I didn't know the severity of what happened. So I showed up to the show at the Blind Pig with long hair that was colored half black and half orange, just like Ash Costello's was. It was so iconic for her. And so I looked like an avid fan of New Year's Day. I was in the front row when Blood on the Dance Floor came on, and he does this thing with like a cannon that shoots cold air, nitrous, something like that into the crowd. It's like a hose that he shoots nitrous into the crowd with, and he starts to do his thing to the Home Alone soundtrack, and he specifically says into the microphone, he says, "Brandon, get down on your knees," and he points at me. And he says it multiple times. You can hear it in the video because I wasn't getting down on my knees. I was 15. He was probably almost 30 at this point. Not sure the exact age, but I'm like, why are you twice my age asking me to get down on my knees? But he kept asking me, so what are you going to do? You know? So I got down on my knees, and he kept saying, "Tell me that you love me. Get down on your knees and tell me that you love me." The stage at the Blind Pig, it's not that far up off the ground. It's a small venue, probably like around this. So when I get down on my knees, because he's short as hell, I'm at crotch level with him. So he's holding the hose in his crotch. You can't really see that part in the video, but I am literally in front of him in that way as if he's mimicking oral sex on me. So this happened for a minute, and then he shot the nitrous cannon at me or whatever. I didn't know at the time that a week before he had asked Ash Costello to get down on her knees and say, "I'm sorry." And this was him literally in a different situation, using the exact same verbiage with me, the exact same stuff. And at the time, you're just happy to be a part of the show. I mean, my adrenaline's going because I'm looking down the freaking barrel of a nitrous cannon, and you shouldn't shoot that in someone's face. But 2 songs later, he pulled me up on stage and sang "Bewitched" to me.
Why do you think he did that to you, Brandon?
I think that he was emulating behavior that he did to Ash, in that it gave him some sort of sick rise to see me looking similar to her with my hair and my makeup. It gave him some sort of sick rise and validation to do that to me in front of everyone, almost like he was imagining that it was Ash or something, because the parallels between the two are insane. You know?
And we had Ash on the show several weeks ago talking about this very incident, and that's what, one of the reasons why they left the tour.
Yeah.
But it's shocking to me that anybody, I mean, the whole thing blows my mind, quite honestly. But, for you to hear what Emiie and so many others have gone through, and then for him to have done something similar, although, as I said, not consummated, in such a public way. I mean, is he obviously a predator, but is he a psychopath, sociopath, or how do you describe him?
It's weird, dude. I don't think I'm ever going to truly be able to describe the type of person he is, but I think that he has deep problems in his mind. You can't go for over a decade of this stuff without having deep issues in your head. I mean, this guy's erratic behavior was evident at shows. Like, he's clearly, you have to be some sick, twisted person to be doing this kind of stuff and still doing it today.
What did you say to him after the show?
After the show,
did you call him out on this?
You know what the weird thing is, Chris? When I was young and I didn't realize the full moment of what had just happened. I didn't realize that it was wrong at the time for someone twice my age to be doing that. I was just happy to be a part of the show and have some, attention on me, I guess, for that moment, because I mean, I wasn't getting it in my home life. Right. So I saw him for a split second after the show. That's when I took the photo with him, one of them that I sent to you. You can see me on the stairs to the tour bus. The photo was taken on the stairs to the tour bus because he literally just came out, took a picture with me, and ran back on the bus. Blood on the Dance Floor always did ridiculously long meet and greets, like long meet and greets. But this was the tour where the security guards were present now, which we all know, yeah. So as soon as those security guards were present, he never came out for a meet and greet that whole show. So it's not even like I had time to call him out or talk to him about it because he was on his bus.
Did you have any sense at the time that he was assaulting young female fans? Was that talked about? Did you have a feeling about it? Did you, looking back, you say, aha, but I didn't want to process it at the time because I was a fan?
We definitely heard things that were going on. And the thing that I think has messed me up so hard about this is I look back at myself and I'm like, dude, how in the hell did you allow him to take advantage of you for so long? Like, now I look back at all of this and I feel so dumb. I feel so stupid because, I never saw anything happen. I never saw it myself, but it just shows how deeply brainwashed I was, dude. Like, it's looking back at everything, like, this man had a way of talking to you and making you feel so heard and seen and understood. Like, I would watch guys bully him at shows, and by the end of the shows, these people who showed up with no other intent than to call him out were his friends. Like, this guy could walk into a room, and with his personality and his manipulation, he could con anyone into believing him. And he conned me into believing that he wasn't bad. He conned me into believing that somehow everything that was being said wasn't true about him. And like, that band, he ran it like a cult, in my opinion. It was very cult-like.
Do you think that this entire enterprise, as far as Dahvie was concerned, was designed to bring in young females to satisfy him, for him to assault?
I would definitely say that, looking back at the situation now and knowing what I know now and listening to all of the stories that have come out, I think that's pretty evident.
The music, the lyrics, the merch, the social media, all appears to be one big human trafficking scheme to bring in underage girls
And like, if you really dissect it and like look at it, I mean, all of the merch was cartoons on shirts. It was young, like cartoons meant to appeal to little kids. They never changed that. The way that he does his makeup, the way that he wears that peacock wig thing, like everything was done to make him look like a freaking cartoon, dude. All know now that he can't sing. So like, and all of the lyrics were so sexually explicit, even though that they lured you in with this interview message of, you know, if you're lost, if you're broken, we hear you, we're the band for you. But then they had all these sexually explicit lyrics. Like, looking back at it, I can definitely see how this was a whole thing, in my opinion.
Brandon, stick with me. I want to bring in Emiie for a second. You guys met before the show. Brandon, you've heard Emmie's story. Emiie, you've heard Brandon's story. Do you feel a kinship here because of what happened to the two of you? I mean, obviously, you were assaulted because you're a woman. Brandon was taken advantage of in his own way as a young person. But do you feel that Dahvie was doing the same thing to both of you?
I do. And I just want to say to Brandon, like, you know, kudos to you, man, for coming out too. I'm super happy that I got to meet you. I hate that it was under these circumstances, but like, you deserve your story to be heard just as much as anybody else. And you are a bad bitch and I adore you.
Emiie, likewise, and same back to you, my friend, or at least I really hope that we can call each other friends after today. And I hope that you know that I'm here for you. And I just want to tell you, Emiie, you are so brave. You are so brave and you are so loved, and it is so important, and it takes so much strength to do what you're doing. And I'm here for you, sister. I hope, I know that you may already know this, but I hope that you know that absolutely none of the stuff that you've talked about is your fault, and you are so loved.
Well, I think that's very important to bring up, Emiie, and that's very true.
I really, really hope that we can definitely be friends after this. I want to be here for you. And we should be here for each other, just as all these people should, you know, we should all help each other. And, you know, you are amazing. And Chris, I appreciate you having him on because he's been just so wonderful. And, you know, you deserve a lot, Brandon. You really do.
Likewise, right back to you, my friend. Thank you.
You know, I think what's amazing about this, one of the things is, out of this tragedy and this abuse and assault on so many different levels, that this amazing community has come together to have its voice heard and to seek justice. And again, just to drive home the point, he's still selling merch on his social media pages, talking about Candyland and things and themes that are targeted towards 13, 14, 15-year-old kids. This is still going on.
He's such a creep. It's funny. I don't understand, with everything that's going on, like, genuinely how he's still getting away with this. This is disgusting. And with how many people have been coming forward for God knows how long now, like, how is this still happening? And, you know, he needs to go to prison, and we all know what happens to pedos in prison.
You know, I want to ask the same question to both of you while you're together here. What do you say to Dahvie tonight, Emiie? You've had time to think about it. You've gone through therapy. You've had to sort out the damage that he's caused for you and the difficult relationships that you've been in because of him and his assault of you. And what do you say to him?
You know, thanks for ruining some of the best years of my life, but we are all bigger than you, and you will go down. That's what I have to say.
Brandon, what do you say to Dahvie tonight?
You know, thank you for asking that, because at first I was just going to say that I have nothing to say to him. He's a piece of crap person. But since you asked it, I can put something together. So, hi, Dahvie. I know that you're watching this right now. I know that you get off on attention, whether it's good attention or bad attention, because I know how sick you are. So I know that you're watching all of these videos, and I know that you see me. I'm not afraid of you anymore. My hope for you is that you take accountability for yourself. I'm not going to sit here and wish harm on you or anything like that, but I hope that you take accountability for what you've done. You're going to have a long time to think about it, and I hope that you realize the magnitude of the hurt that you have caused. And the last time that I thought about it, I don't think that they allow your peacock wig in prison, so enjoy it while you can.
Emiie, you're studying to be a forensic scientist, and you want to one day work for the FBI or another major law enforcement agency. Did this horrible situation lead you to that decision to study this field and to try to do what you're going to try to do?
In a long, convoluted way, yeah. I was dealing with so many abusive relationships, and I decided, you know what? I want to stand up for people like me. I want to stand up for myself, but I want to stand up for those people that don't think that they can stand up for themselves. Because, girl, boy, whoever you are, you can stand up for yourself. You are a bad ass, and all we need to do is stand up and, I want to take out the bad people in the world. That's my goal.
Brandon, how did this shape you as a young man today? You're a successful hairdresser in suburban Detroit. You've worked for some celebrity hairdressers. You're now out on your own. Do you still deal with baggage from this time with Dahvie?
That's a really good question. Thank you for asking it. I can't deny that this man has left his mark on me. I spent my entire teenage years, all of my teenage years, worshiping him. I cannot deny that he has left his mark. But I won't allow him to shape me into anything that wouldn't benefit me. I'm thriving now. And I buried this stuff for so long. I thought that when Blood on the Dance Floor fizzled out that this was done. So I just buried it. And I didn't know that, obviously this is all still happening. And, when you're alone at 3 months in quarantine, you really have to come to terms with all of your demons, and you have to face every single thing. And I'm just so glad that I was able to face it. And I'm glad that we're all able to come forward and do this, because, at the end of the day, we're going to get our justice. And at the end of the day, if you do bad things like this, you're going to get what's coming to you. And so I thank him. I'm stronger. I'm thriving. I'm better. And he's in his parents' basement.
Emiie, you talk about becoming a forensic scientist for the FBI to help other people. You realize, right, that you are helping other young women right now, tonight, by doing what you're doing.
I would really hope that other people feel comfortable enough to come forward, to anybody who's watching who may have been a victim. I have severe anxiety, and I'm absolutely just glad to have this opportunity, because Brandon's right. We will get our justice. Every one of his victims will get their justice.
Why did you think it was so important to take the step of coming on the show tonight, Emiie?
I wanted to be part of bringing light to the situation, because I know so many young women have come forward, but I want to help inspire more young women and more young men, because we don't know who else he was abusing. And it doesn't matter if it was sexual or just physical and mental abuse. Those people need to come forward.
And Brandon, this was ratting around in your mind for a long time. Some of the other folks who were on the show, you knew and reached out to talk to me. Why was it so important for you to do this? You didn't have to.
Thanks for asking that. There's 2 reasons. One, it's the fact that it's still happening today. It's the fact that he's still active. It's the fact that he still has not taken accountability and been caught and learned his lesson. That was the first reason why I came forward. We need to stop this. The second reason why I came forward is because I believe that, at least what I hope people might have a better idea of after me coming forward, is that he was so calculated in how he did this. He knew what he was doing. We were all pawns in a chess game, and he was just this master manipulator that was orchestrating so many people and playing us like pawns. And I hope that people can understand that there's severe psychological problems going on here as well. Is all of that.
Brandon, final thoughts tonight for everybody watching and for Emiie.
Emiie, I just want to say it again. You're so brave. You're so fantastic. And I send you so much positivity and love. And thank you so much for coming forward. It is so needed, and you are so valid. And Chris, thank you for all that you are doing. Thank you for all of these interviews. Thank you for bringing attention to this. I'm so beyond grateful. Thank you.
Well, you know, I appreciate that very much, and a lot of people work very hard on all this. But the truth is, none of it happens without people like you guys coming on the show to talk about it. You know, I can rant and rave and cite injustices all I want, but without you guys being brave and doing the very difficult chore of coming on and doing it and putting yourself out there and exposing yourself in your vulnerabilities in the most public way, I can't do it, you know. Emiie, thank you. Your final thoughts tonight before we say goodnight.
Chris, thank you so much for having me on to talk about this. And Brandon, so much love to you. And I genuinely do hope we can be friends. You are such a brave and strong individual, and I wish nothing but happiness for you. And like I said, I want to be friends, and I want everyone to realize that it's okay to speak out against your abuser. And it's encouraged. Don't let these people treat you that way. Anybody that is hurting you, please don't let them hurt you.
All right. Emiie, Edel, Brandon Curtis, thank you so much for having a seat with me tonight. I appreciate it. It was very powerful, profound. I'm going to have you hang on. I'm going to connect the two of you after the show so you can stay in touch. And I got a couple other things I want to run by you. But thank you very much for being so brave and courageous. All right. Thank you for joining us again tonight as we continue our investigation. We are going to put some links up on the show here so you can get in touch with Levy, who kind of coordinates the stuff, and some of the other people involved to make sure you get the proper information to the proper authorities. There is a lot happening behind the scenes, and I mean, there's reason for hope there. Dahvie's days are numbered. He's going to face justice, and in a big way. And I want you to remember something else too, because people talk about the statute of limitations, and in some states, depending on the crime, it's 7 years, and some it's longer. But even if in your particular instance, the statute of limitations has run out, your testimony can be very important for law enforcement to get subpoenas, to go into computers, to search things, to get evidence. And remember, and I've said this before, and I think it's important to remember, even in the Harvey Weinstein trial, one of the significant witnesses was a woman who claimed to have been sexually assaulted, and there was evidence that she was, by Harvey Weinstein. The statute of limitations had run out, but her testimony was critical for similar acts. There's a part of the law that allows for testimony to bolster the testimony of victims whose victimization took place within the statute of limitations. So everything from everyone is critical here. So keep that in mind. We'll put the links up here and get those out on social media as well. Thank you again for joining. We are working on a number of angles on the Onision story. Greg James Jackson, the YouTube psycho brat from Washington State. And we'll have more on that very soon. We're also going to take a look at some human trafficking angles and investigations and aspects coming up very soon, and a few other things. We're also talking about a open mic night of sorts, where at some point very soon you'll be able to ask me anything you want, and we'll talk about that and try to put that out in a way that can raise some money for charity and perhaps therapy for some of the survivors in all these cases that we explore on this show every week. Anyway, thanks again for tuning in. I hope your summer's going all right. I hope you're staying safe and healthy. If you're in one of the areas where the COVID-19 is spiking again, please listen to the scientists. Please do everything you're being asked. And please stay safe and healthy. I'll be watching, and I'll see you next week when we have a seat together. Take care.